Okay, right out of the gate, we are going to look at our distance learning framework. This was attached to the highlights for today, this document. So if you want to have it up, otherwise just follow along on the screen. I'm going to kind of walk through this with you because there's a lot of explanation that needs to be done. And I want to make sure we're all clear and on the same page. So distance learning, there's really 3 models of instruction that can take place this year. And I'm going to talk about distance learning, but I want to go over the other 3 just to make sure we're kind of clear on what this is. So face-to-face is what we want to happen. That's what we're starting in. It's that face-to-face or real life instruction. Kids are coming to school, going to their classroom. The virtual is where students are learning at home while the rest of the kids are in the building. So we have some kids starting this year virtually. Their first day of school will be at home. But this also might happen during the school year if a child would need to be home for some reason. Maybe they were exposed to COVID, a positive case, maybe it was a cousin or something over the weekend, and just your child needs to quarantine. So the rest of the classes come into school. That would be virtual. And then the final one is distance. And this really needs to be kind of redescribed. So in the spring, we did distance learning, or distance teaching, excuse me. And it was an emergency. We did not have time to plan for something. We put this model together. It worked great, it worked well, but we all kind of recognize that with anything, you can do things better, make improvements. So after the spring, when the last day of school kind of occurred, we then put together some town hall meetings, some little Zoom meetings where parents came on and gave us feedback about the distance teaching model we used. A lot of positives, areas to improve. Our teachers also provided us with some feedback. They reflected. And then we put a work group together for this summer. So this past summer, some teachers ran a work group, took all the information that was shared at those meetings in June, teacher feedback, and then worked on developing the plan you see in front of you. What we will do for this year is going to look a lot different than what it was in the spring, but also what distance teaching is defined as and how it's going to be used is going to be different as well. In the spring, it was kind of an indefinite situation. We weren't returning to school. We knew it was going to be for a long period of time, about 3 months. This year, distance teaching may be used by only a portion of the school. It may be used by all of the school for a portion of time. So let me explain some of the scenarios. So if one classroom has a positive COVID case, that classroom has to quarantine. So all those kids will be home, but the rest of the building, their other 300 students can still come to school. So we wouldn't want everybody home for 20. So those 20 students would be at home learning, and they'd be learning in a distant format. Let's say that all of middle school is out. Middle school would be in distance. The rest of the school would be coming to school and getting their face-to-face while they're distant. And they would just be distant for 2 weeks until we can come back after that quarantine. So it's a short period of time. We also may be informed that the schools in Wisconsin are closing, or the schools in, I don't know, Southeast Wisconsin may be closing. I don't know the scenarios. I have no idea what that would look like, but that could happen. The spring has taught me that anything can happen and you don't know. So I'm just kind of always prepared for those scenarios. So if we would be closed down, if someone would tell us we have to close down, the whole school then would be home. We'd be in distance. They may say you need to close down for a month, the rest of the year. Again, don't know, but that's when we would kind of lean on this distanced approach. So what I like about what our work group came up with is that this distance learning approach is very flexible. It's flexible for the 20 kids who need to be home for 2 weeks. It's flexible for the 100 middle school students. It's flexible for the 320 Lumen Christi students. So what I'm going to show you today is really a well thought out plan. It's very detailed, but there's also area and room for that to become even more detailed and a little bit more flexible. So the first thing here is just the model. So we are going to be doing live instruction. We heard loud and clear that that's something that's important. And teachers also were like, this needs to be kind of live. We realized the recordings were great to a point, but just having that FaceTime is important. So during the distance learning model, short-term, long-term, students will receive live instruction from their classroom teacher. So we're not going to really outsource that. It'll be their teacher, or it might be a substitute teacher. That's a short period of time for 5 days a week. Part of their day will be live, which is synchronous, and then part of their day will be on their own or asynchronous. The start and end times of their day will mirror what a traditional day would be, but there is some flexibility within that time frame. Because you're not in the building, you can be more flexible. You have some more options available to you. Students need to be available between the hours of 8 and 3, and then we will be taking daily attendance. So you don't have to click that form anymore. I know you're sad. I know you love that part of your day or your week. You don't need to do that anymore. The teachers will be taking attendance. Learning platforms, we heard that it was way too much, too confusing, not enough instruction. So we'll be starting this school year off on these platforms right out of the gate. So the teachers are gonna get students on these platforms so they know if we have to shut down, it's kind of seamless. There'll be some parent instruction coming as well. So we've narrowed down what we're using, so it's more predictable. For the live instruction, we'll be using Zoom. The 3K and 4K students will be using Google Slides as well as Zoom. Our 5K through 2nd grade students will be using Seesaw as their platform for turning in homework and receiving work into their home. And then 3rd all the way through 8th are going to be using Google Classroom. Delivery will be live and pre-recorded, so I talked about that as well. So let's talk about the live. So teachers will meet with the students 5 days a week via Zoom. Every week, if you have a 5K through 3rd grade teacher or students, those teachers every week will provide you with a schedule of when that synchronous will occur. I'm going to show you in a minute the instructional block, so it will occur within a certain time frame, but more specifics, like you need to be on at 9, will be coming to you on a weekly basis. We want to give teachers the flexibility to schedule their time, because it really does change based on what you're teaching your children and the model and the methods you're using to teach them. It does change from week to week. 4th through 8th grade students, those students are just going to follow their regular schedule. Those grades, when they're in the building, follow a bell. A bell rings, the kids move. A bell rings, this happens. Where the younger kids or the younger students, the teachers say, okay, we're gonna have math from 9 to 10, but if it goes to 10:15 one day, it's not that big of a deal. We're in the 4th through 8th, they would be into the next class period, so that can't happen. The schedule will be a little bit modified because we don't want kids sitting in front of a Zoom from 8 to 3, so it's gonna be modified. So what will happen? What will that live session look like? So the live instruction will take place over a certain amount of time. So let's say it's going to be a 30-minute block of math instruction. The teacher has the flexibility to use that 30 minutes, how they feel would benefit the class the best. So they may be on for 30 minutes and everybody's there listening to a lesson. They may take that 30 minutes and do 15 minutes of whole group, so everyone's on the Zoom call. And then they might break that group into what's called Zoom breakout rooms, which kids can be divided into small groups on Zoom, and they go into like a separate room that the teacher can monitor. They may go into that for then 10 minutes and then come back as a whole class for the last portion of the time. They may meet with whole group for 10 minutes and then just say, okay, you 5 students, you stay on the Zoom, everybody else go work on your work. We'll see you later today. So again, there's a lot of flexibility. Asynchronous instruction. So at times throughout the day, your child may need to watch a pre-made video. They may be working on skills that were taught during the live sessions. That might be that application of skills. They'd be working on that at their table or desk at home. They may be working with a peer in Google Classroom on maybe they're writing a script for something and they're working together on that. There's just a lot of options of what that will look like. So here's the proposed schedule. Again, this is a framework. It will become more specific and detailed to you once your child's in that model. But for the most part, what you can expect to happen is elementary students will have a morning meeting. They then will transition into an instructional block. So there may be some live, some asynchronous. 8:15 to 8:30 might be 5 students on a Zoom call with the teacher doing a guided reading. They might be reading a book together while everybody else is not on the computer, they're at home, and they're working on penmanship books or something, for example. So it's that blended approach. At 10 o'clock, there'll be a break for everybody. And then 10:15 to 12, again, back into that block of instruction, and that will be fluid. Lunch will be 12 to 1, so that gives the students a chance to kind of take a break, run around, have lunch, watch a show, whatever they're going to do. And then in the afternoon is flex time. So going back to maybe working on some work from the morning. There might be a project they're working on. It also gives the teacher a chance to do one-on-one check-ins with students throughout the week. So a Zoom call with a child for 15 minutes. It's just you and I. How's it going? How's your math? Or I'm going to ask you some math questions that we learned this week about area and perimeter. And I might show us an object, so I might be doing some assessments. Know that the blocks are when students need to be available. We do know that the younger the students are, the more dependent they are on someone sitting next to them. So it will look different in kindergarten versus second grade. Even though those are only a few grades apart, the maturity level and what those students can do on their own is very, very different. So that will be modified to meet the child's age and grade level. We did also hear from families that it was too many subjects to manage. So if we are in a long-term shutdown, then we will be focusing on just some of the core areas: math, kind of that literacy, reading, phonics, writing, religion. And then the teachers would flip between science and social studies. Again, this is long-term. So we'd have science for 4 weeks, social studies for 4 weeks. If we're just down for a couple of weeks, the teacher will make that judgment call. They might say, you know what, right now in science, we're doing experiments and we can't do them at home. So we'll be back in the building in 2 weeks. We'll pick up that experiment when we get back. And then if it's a long-term, specials would be 1 special per trimester. So again, we want to focus on quality and quantity versus the quantity of specials you're taking. Middle school parents, here you go. I know you've been waiting for this. Hold in your breath. This is what we will be doing. Your child will follow their schedule, but classes will be 30 minutes. This is for the live. So your child will log into Zoom 8 o'clock for their first hour class. Let's just say that science, they'll be on with Mrs. Huff from 8 to 8:30. Then there'll be a 5-minute break so they can kind of get organized. Then they'll log into their second hour Zoom call. Again, just like the elementary, there's flexibility there. And it might be like one day they might just like Zoom in and say, okay, checking in. You guys have a huge project you're working on. How's it going? Everyone's okay. I'm going to talk to you, Johnny. Everybody else can leave and maybe talking to Johnny. Go work on your project. Flexibility, but there will be that face-to-face time every day just to check in and see how it's going. So they'll follow their schedule, as you can see. 12:30 is when classes are over. Oh, I have a typo there. I'll fix that. This should be 12:40. They will, 12:35, they'll have a break from 12:35 until 1:15. Then the afternoon time will be spent on their asynchronous work. So this is all live. So it's a big chunk of live time for those children. They'll then in the afternoon transition to doing sort of their homework or their work that came with all of this live instruction. It normally would happen in the classroom. That's going to be kind of chunked together from 1:15 to 3. Our teachers are going to be on what's called open Zoom calls. So from 1:30 to 2, every teacher is going to have a Zoom call that's open. The children will have a list of those Zoom calls, the passwords and the codes. They need help from Mrs. Nolan. They'll click on her Zoom link that they'll be provided with. She'll just be sitting on Zoom and, oh, hey, how you doing, Johnny? What's your question? And then they can have that conversation. There may be 3 children in that open Zoom call. There may be nobody. If a child feels they need like a one-on-one or a special question, they can reach out to their teacher and make an appointment between 2 and 3. So maybe it's just a phone call. Maybe they're just going to dialogue through email. So that's our plan in a nutshell. I am proud of the work that our teachers did. We put a lot of thought into it. We do know, and we're very mindful though, that things change and we may need to tweak things. We'll be looking for feedback on the plan if and when we go into that distance teaching framework.